Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piskor.
And we have special guest in the house today, Jim Mahfood. Before we dive into this Martin Emond art appreciation episode, I want to remind everybody of Cartoonist Kayfabe Comic Book Christmas in July. We're asking all of our audience to pull out their extra comics, the comics that they don't want anymore, the comps that they have, and put them in your local lending libraries, those small neighborhood libraries that are out there. We know readers use those, so let's try to make some new comic book readers by putting good comic books into those local libraries the last Saturday in July, coming up shortly, July 30th. So help us build some new comic book readers there. We also ask everybody to like, follow, and subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe YouTube channel if you haven't done so already. Hit the bell icon to be notified of new videos, so whenever you see White Trash comics and you don't have it in your collection, you want to be the first ones to go looking for these on eBay or at your local comic shop. So hit that notification button and you will have a leg up on the Kayfabe effect, where these books can get scarce quickly or they can go up in price as the day goes on. And finally, let these videos play through to the end. That allows YouTube's algorithm to share our videos with other comics fans that haven't found Cartoonist Kayfabe yet. It's how we grow the channel, and we appreciate your help on that. And before we crack one of these beautiful books open, Jim Mahfood, guest of the episode, where should people look for your latest, greatest work?
Yeah, guys, Girl Scout Stone Ghost, my latest trade in comic shops, or score a signed copy off my website, jimmahfood.com. Also, brand new exclusive Girl Scouts comics at zestworld.com that I'm creating for the next year. And Jim Mahfood on Twitter and Instagram. Just my name is my handle. And say hi. Let's do it.
Sounds good. So Martin Emond, super interesting cartoonist. We have some Lobo books that we're going to get into after we flip through some of White Trash. White Trash is where I first saw this guy's work. Great painter. Kind of almost like a gig poster sign painting kind of style, very graphic. And White Trash published by Tundra, and I think Tundra UK maybe specifically.
Right, yeah.
Although I might be wrong about that, because I associate him with like UK comics. He was in the anthology Toxic, which was a UK publication, but he's actually from New Zealand, so I may be wrong about it being UK.
Gordon Rennie's a Brit, and it's so funny to think like Fantagraphics, right? Publishers of Monsters and Everything I Love Is Monsters.
Yeah.
And Tundra Publications, they might have done a couple dozen books, 3 dozen books or something, and they did White Trash and Trailer Trash, of which you and I have very famous arguments about, both thinking that we were adamantly correct, that no, the Tundra book was called Trailer Trash by Roy Tompkins. No, it was called White Trash by Marty Emond, and we were both correct.
Yeah, I feel like that's Kevin Eastman pulling a rib on us from the past. It does say Tundra Publishing UK, so we were right about that. But you can see right off the bat, it's this painted art style, which wasn't that common in the early 90s. Not very many people capable of doing that, especially at this detail level, and a 4-issue miniseries at this detail level. Wild.
Kevin Eastman is a heck of a patron of the comic arts, and he has a very specific kind of taste. It's a very butch taste. Bisley comes to mind and stuff.
Yes.
And this kind of style is in that wheelhouse, with a mix of the whimsical kind of flavor you would get from like a Jamie Hewlett or guys like that.
Definitely, and it's probably what attracted me to this to begin with. I am so impressed with like the painting on this car. It looks both plastic and metal at the same time. Wild stuff.
Amazing. Yeah, man, throughout this series, like the grills of the car are so impressive, and this series is just, it's straight up gonzo comics. As you can see on the left page there, top panel, there's even a reference to Raoul Duke, Hunter S. Thompson's alias in his gonzo works. So I'm assuming Martin is also, looking at Ralph Steadman, and I don't know if it was Nathan Cabrera, who Nathan shared a studio with him in LA for a little bit, who told me that in the beginning of his career, Martin was struggling to find his style. And then he eventually connected with Simon Bisley and like went to Simon's studio and hung out for like a month or something. And Simon basically showed him the foundations of how he paints and illustrates. And Martin took that and is using a similar process, which I believe is working darks first, dark into light. And then Martin took that and twisted it into his own, unique brand of crazy, bizarre looking stuff. I really like his work a lot. It's very unique, very bugged out, and he's doing his own thing for sure and fully going for it.
Jim, did you ever meet Martin? I think your time in LA may have overlapped a little bit.
I didn't, I got there in 2003 and he unfortunately passed in 2004. So, I mean, that's the other thing about his work is we only have this kind of small window of his stuff, but I think everything he did is definitely worth checking out. It's all, and you guys, huge shock, but I'm really drawn to artists that have their own unique, bugged out, bizarre style. So his work, as soon as I saw it, really spoke to me. And I think it's okay to say this, but there was also parts of his work that I found kind of unappealing when I first saw it, like kind of off-putting, but then you get into it and it I really admire just that go for it attitude, and you can't deny the craftsmanship and the painting skills. It's crazy shit.
Yeah, the color looks beautiful on here. You mentioned Hewlett and Bisley, and I see so many signs of those two guys like flipping through this issue. Yeah. And one of the great qualities for me is the cartooniness, like the big eyeballs, the kind of elongated, stretched, weird figure shapes and things like that. I'm a big fan of that, and it's something that when I started reading comics, I just didn't see a lot in Marvel DC. And you'd see these guys show up that were like way more hardcore than Marvel DC, and yet somehow still had that cartoony element in it. And it just blew my mind. It was almost like too many different things converging on one page.
Right.
But, it was also that thing of like, oh, this is possible. Go this direction. Like incorporate all of these influences.
Definitely, man. And it's interesting too, because I was noticing this stuff, but like comparing to Bisley, like Bisley's figures are all very, muscular, and Frank Frazetta on steroids and very macho. And Martin isn't afraid to get weird, elongated, grotesque almost with the anatomy. And some of it looks like it's inspired by like Egon Schiele or something, there's traces of almost like fine art in his stuff. It's just very interesting, unique stuff. And even his storytelling has its own kind of vibe to it.
Fun incorporation of lettering here too, but the amount of detail that you see like on bikes and reflective surfaces, it's shocking. Like I'm always kind of confused how like people that paint actually do comics where it's like 10 panels on a page, 10 panels on a page. Like how are you doing this?
It's when you go to Biz's studio and you see the kind of system that's at play that it starts to make more sense, I think.
I also like seeing some of the ads for what's going on in comics at this time
period. Certainly Tundra. We saw that skin ad. And Jim, I mentioned Carol Swain in the Generation X video that we did, and she helped out on that skin book with Brenda McCarthy.
Okay.
I love seeing this too, incorporating different media, like having some notebook paper for a background.
And that feels Stedman-ish, like a Stedman kind of hand style.
Even a little bit of the lettering has that Stedman, maybe more controlled, but a little bit of that quality.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm talking about. There's a lot at play. I mean, there's Von Bode.
Great
here.
lettering there.
I see certain pieces that feel like Joe Coleman.
I mean, this could have been in Deadline magazine if Tundra hadn't showed up.
I was going to say Highlights magazine, rainy day fun for boys and girls.
Yeah. Welcome to the Terror Dome, direct, reference to Public Enemy, and a lot of pop culture nods. The story itself is basically like, what if Elvis and Axl Rose teamed up to go on a Gonzo-style mission across the country? The Axl character is named Dean. They couldn't actually use Axl's name, but his goal is to get to LA to become a famous rock star. Elvis, who's just referred to as the King, is going to Vegas. And I mean, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas style, they're literally two crazy guys in a convertible driving across the desert, causing, violence and mischief and mayhem. It's not hard to put together like what the influences are here, It has that like Americana kind of quality, like where you see Brits or people
doing their version of America that I think's filtered through pop culture mostly that we're exporting.
Totally.
Is what we're getting thrown back at us on these pages, which makes for a pretty fun read.
Yeah. It's, the earlier generation, it would have been Jean Giraud's Mike Moby, like the Lieutenant Blueberry shit, where, our export at the time was cowboy movies.
Yes, exactly.
And that's the kind of stuff, Garth Ennis has a version of that where he's into like very butch, macho, like U.S. Army stuff.
Yeah, and like you can kind of see our exports at this point.
Is it Ed? Go back real quick. Ed, is this a painted page from Red Room?
There's, right.
Ed Gein burgers and
Bundy bars.
Wow. Yeah.
Man, these centerfolds too. Again, it calls to mind Deadline magazine to me because there will often be those color centerfolds in the early deadlines, and man, this stuff looks on point for that.
Look at the striations.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
The details in the shoes and things, just really mind blowing. Glenn Fabry comes to mind too. Another one of those.
It's all the Biz
British
Disciples
painters. Yeah,
the Biz Disciples, and one of the things that they do, like it's interesting. You mentioned the dark to light because one of the hallmarks of Biz that is divorced from almost everybody who paints is he will use black. And that's the old rule. You never ever use black in your paint, but Biz disobeys that, and you see Emond certainly does also.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know if you guys learned early on, but I kind of learned early on that in every piece you do, you want to have a blackest black and a whitest white area of every panel, every illustration you do, and then everything in between that, all the different variations of gray, the medium tones, that helps balance things. But to me, not using black seems almost counterintuitive,
It does. Man, seeing some of these vehicles calls to mind like Fury Road.
Yeah.
McCarthy designs for Fury Road. That's another thing that's impressive to me is to be able to do figures and cars. That's almost everything.
Yeah.
Because that's a really three-dimensional thing, your cars, and also blocky, square, straight edges. And if you can do that well, like, what else is there? Like there's some combination between the figure and the car that would cover just about everything. I like these like faux advertisements because here you're getting to see like pen and ink work with him. Pretty good if you're going to do faux advertising in your comic to be able to like switch up the style enough to make it look different than the typical panels. Look at that for a great back cover, right?
That cover is amazing.
So hardcore.
That's ridiculous. It's awesome.
Same deal here, seeing some of the pen and ink work, it just really makes that separate from the contents of the actual comic.
Yep.
Yeah, creates a great whole, though, as a package goes.
I wonder if he's lettering this himself. I was trying to figure that out. It might be one of these credits down here, a roadie.
It's such a controlled lettering. Like, I don't think he would be able to do that. Like, clearly this is him, but that really looks like a different hand.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. There's so much lettering, though, that's in the art that's really standout stuff.
Yeah. Here goes some of that Egon Schiele sort of proportionality.
Makes me wonder if he had some commercial art background or a design background or something. Because it's a real attention to details that not every cartoonist has.
I know that he did album covers for Danzig and also did some stuff for Danzig's Verotic line. So I'm assuming he definitely comes from that illustration background and knowing how to incorporate logos and text and just everything into a piece, not just doing sequentials.
This makes me want him to do a Predator comic. Wouldn't that have been badass?
Yes.
It's so funny, the overlap as far as taste goes between Kevin Eastman and Glenn Danzig, because they use like a lot of the same guys, man.
Absolutely. Yeah. Seriously, though, he would have been the best dude ever on a Predator comic.
Wow. I don't doubt that we will not see a sexual Tyrannosaurus in the pages of White Trash at some point. I mean, that's a good Arnold.
Yeah, that's funny. Is that a metal plate like on his forehead? That's great.
That's like British. That's like some 2000 AD.
Yeah,
type shit.
you see those Judge Dredd bad guys would have that.
This is the greatest panel of my life. You can see the album influence too. I mean, how much Iron Maiden, you could fit him right into that. Jeez.
Oh yeah, and it's interesting because, like, looking at all 4 issues of this series, I feel like his painting skills greatly improve as the series goes on. Like he's learning as he's working on this series.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm not sure when he did that toxic stuff that I was talking about. Like Accident Man, I think is one of I think he did like 2 serials in Toxic. But time-wise, like this might have been one of his first comics, White Trash.
Yeah, Jim, I think Toxic was before this. Like in my notes, I had that as being one of his early things, and he did that with Pat Mills.
Yeah.
Love
so I think effect, having your motion and doing that cartoonist effect.
A little DeLuca.
Exactly. Yeah, Pat Mills, another guy who certainly seems to have an eye for talent and finding these guys and being like the first collaborator with a lot of these great talents.
Go see the shoot interview.
The amount of detail, though, in some of these paintings.
Makes you wonder how big the original art is. Or
It
is he
does.
using, like, 2 bristle-haired brushes?
I can't imagine, like you could see all the detail of like all the bullets in those belts. It's really over the top.
Here comes Flight of the Valkyries.
Wow, yeah.
Able to nail quite a few textures too. Getting that metallic texture, big piece of if you're going to paint. And then this is almost like cell animation or something, these flat figures on top of it. Bringing in some of the pen and ink work.
On that right page, look at the silhouette of that evil Cadillac. It's just like, it's ridiculous. It's awesome.
There was a guy who worked with Bakshi who would paint backgrounds. It would be like the backgrounds in the movie Cool World, and there would be backgrounds in the background of American Pop that would push the figures and the proportions of the backgrounds, the perspectives in that same way. If you go on his Instagram page, Bakshi's, he highlights a lot of that guy's artwork, but it's very similar, fully painted, very, very exaggerated.
Yeah.
Nice.
A lot of detail.
That cover is ridiculous too, man. Look at that. That's
that Atom
Atomica,
yeah.
Wow.
So it's a dual published thing?
I don't know. I guess I see that on a lot of these covers. They all have that, and it's in the credits. And I think that's Dave Elliott is in the credits page. I think that
he's going into business for himself
from that lineup. I think
he was the guy who was the head of Tundra UK.
Cartoonist Kayfabe is brought to you by the comics that Ed Piskor and I make. Red Room Trigger Warnings, the second season of Red Room, all self-contained stories, issues 1 to 4, now available in comic shops everywhere. Red Room, the Antisocial Network, the trade paperback collection of the first season of Red Room, now available in comic shops everywhere, minus 28 countries where it's banned and 10 comic shops, but you can still request it there. And coming in September, the collection, the trade paperback of Red Room Trigger Warnings will be in stores in September. You can pre-order that now at your local comic shop or online wherever you buy your books. Hulk Grand Design Monster and Hulk Grand Design Madness in comic shops everywhere. The 60-year history of the Incredible Hulk. I am writing, drawing, lettering, coloring the Grand Design treatment, retelling that 60-year history. And you can now pre-order the Hulk Grand Design Oversized Treasury Collection, about 40 extra pages in that. It'll be in stores before Christmas, but you can pre-order it now in your comic shops or in your bookstores, wherever you buy comics. And now back to our regular scheduled programming. Tap into every manga fan's greatest dream with Comixology Unlimited. Get unlimited access to an unrivaled library of over 40,000 digital comics, manga, and graphic novels featuring hit manga titles like Attack on Titan, Vinland Saga, and Fairy Tail. And on top of that, you can also save up to 15% when buying select new and current comics. With Comixology Unlimited, get unlimited reading anywhere you go. Try Unlimited today with a free 30-day trial and just $5.99 a month afterwards. For details, visit amazon.com/comicsunlimited. This to me feels like we've introduced some new media or some different paint techniques from the first 3 issues.
Yeah, getting the airbrush in there.
Which is pretty great if you're building towards getting to Vegas, to have something left up your sleeve to be like, here's some new visuals that we're going to put on the page once we arrive.
That's almost Bakshi-ish, by the way.
It is. Yeah, it has that glow that you would see in animation. I guess, coming from that lighting effect, you can get a little bit more of that glow. That's amazing.
That's unbelievable.
Must have transpired between the last issue and this one, because he's really leveling up.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I mean. It's like you can see this really obvious evolution in his just technical ability. It's really impressive.
Yeah, it's killer stuff.
Because it's like one page of this might take you a month to do, and he's given us a couple dozen.
Yeah, and how hard is it to have this Cadillac now in a state of being crashed, drawing that from some different perspectives? That's hilarious. There's our king, man.
There's
in
the
all his
king,
glory.
baby. Yeah, he's rocking the gold suit.
How about that drapery?
It's wonder what Axl Rose thinks when something like this comes out. Just furious. Mad he's not.
I'm
getting
sure.
his
You know,
parts.
I would think that he would maybe think this was a compliment.
I think, if I remember right, he had a sense of humor about Weird Al doing some stuff, doing some parody songs.
I'm so impressed by these panels that break down and just go into like all this detail. It's an interesting way, you know, like this makes sense, right? You could see doing a series like this, but then you get into like, let's draw cameras and reel-to-reel tape players and stuff. Just a lot
Yeah,
to balance. That's a great effect of light coming between your panels. Really like that. Interesting that it doesn't bleed. One bleed here, but most of these pages don't bleed. Surprising for this time of year.
Look at that gun. Look at that rendering. It's a shame that this splash page is right next to a full page ad. That's weird placement because that ad takes away from the thunder of that, you know, that splash.
It really does. I love that you can see like the paint strokes in the those highlights.
Yeah.
It's nice. And like that motion blur. It's good stuff.
Man. Feeling lucky, punk.
Yeah, playing the hits. Like I said, it really is this like American, you know, what we would see in Preacher a few years later on, something like that. Just taking a stab at some of the popular American culture.
Yeah, and it's that perfect thing where like we're too close to it. We couldn't see our own stuff the way that somebody from right outside,
we're not coming up with Elvis next to the eagle.
Yeah, with music notes and shit. That's genius.
That is really good. I don't know how you resist putting that on the cover. And holy shit. Like even the action figure in the package.
Yeah, that there's so much going on here.
It's brilliant. It's almost a still life. Makes me wonder if you set up a still life if you're going to attempt to paint this.
I bet you.
And then you fill in your details. Because having things like a necklace on top of handwritten notes and pieces of paper and magazines.
You even got to get the perspective right, kind of.
Yeah. And the different, you know, like a tape case and cigarette package. It's a lot to manage.
Yeah, it's interesting to figure out like how much photo reference that he used throughout this entire series, you know, with just everything, understanding how to paint drapery, clothing,
motorcycles.
It's wow.
Because none of it looks like you're tracing a photo. It all looks like he's adding a cartoon layer to it.
Yeah.
You know, I think that Cadillac that was in the first three and a half issues is a good example of that, where it's like recognizable as a Cadillac, but by no means like proportionally accurate. Like I said, some of my favorite stuff comes out of that style, where there's a recognizable real world counterpart, but it is just twisted through the, you know, demented vision of the artist.
Definitely.
There's that Hewlett-ish kind of sense of proportion and the Emond color on top.
Man, I love
look at those creatures at the bottom. Like that's amazing, man. It's crazy shit.
Totally wild.
Those highlights, man, that really sells the dimensionality.
And I love that now they're incorporating like the Dear Penthouse letter column part. Like, listeners, send in some Polaroids. Right on point.
Look at that with the bubble gum. That's amazing.
Yeah, what a good sound effect. Working the sound effect into that bubble bursting.
By the way, I remember these days where you would just open up 10 Bazooka Joes and put them all in at once.
So disgusting.
Seeing him do this piece though, it lets me know that like, oh wow, this guy could have been one of the illustrators on like Topps cards, like Wacky Packs or Garbage Pail or any of that. You know, he has what's his name, John Pound. He can almost channel that level of illustrator it could have crossed over. I mean, into that level of, I'm illustrating for Tops now, or whoever, whatever other client comes along.
Yeah, you can really see like some of the cartooning in this. It's really clear. It's amazing that you can see through the bubble being blown up. And I mean, like the expression on a face of blowing up a bubble, got to be one of the harder expressions to try to pull off. And it's there, look closely, you can see that translucent bubble and see him doing it. That's amazing stuff. So that's some painted work from Martin Emond. And let's get into some of the pen and ink and line work that he brought to Lobo in like 1994-95. I believe this is his first Lobo. And, you can see the painted style on the cover completely over the top with anatomy and even the details of like Lobo's, the pieces that like the skull kneecaps and stuff, even playing with the cartoon elements on those. It's a great start.
Yeah. Very, very striking cover. No pun intended. But
this lets you know the time period that we're dealing with, man. Batman just got his back broke.
Right. But you can see, like, this lets you know that they read White Trash in order to find him for a Lobo project, where he's bringing in his, like, stinky, fly-infested collection of Bounty.
Yep.
Incredible. Once you see the pen and ink, I can't help but think of Richard Corbin.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that in there. But the cartooning is still there. Seeing that Axl Rose blowing the bubble, it carries right over here.
You know what I love about these guys, man? He's such a drawer, but he's not going to, like, give you that, like, take down on the page, roll out your perspective grids, kind of backgrounds and stuff.
Yeah,
it's all cartooning. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's very liberating.
That's one of the things that draws me to his style, to his work, is it's like, okay, this is a guy that's just fully forming his own universe to play in with his work. And
he does
that's what I'm most attracted to with, cartooning and comics.
And not to take a shot, but how boring is this compared to this? They're not doing him any favors advertising in this particular book.
Yeah, that's funny.
Emond brings a lot to Lobo also. Like, it's tough, I think, to follow Bisley on a character like Lobo, but there's a few things that he brings in. His, I think the figure itself is a little bit different, but also even like the hair is a different treatment than what Bisley was doing. And here we see passed out Lobo and what he's dreaming of. Just 20 girls all around him.
That's awesome. Yeah, and he's Bisley. Obviously, when he does his ink work, it's a scratchier, more Sienkiewicz-y textural thing on the rougher end, and Martin's doing, his own completely unique thing. I wouldn't say it's smooth and clean, but it's definitely, he's not having to, commit to following, anything that Simon did. He's just going for it on his own.
It still keeps that very cartoonish figures running around. This is almost a road warrior. Doesn't that profile look like...
Yeah.
Those guys, like, their first costumes, like, look like that, man.
Sneaking in some painted pieces. That's always a slick move. It feels like Sam Keith would do that, like in the Max, where it'd be a couple of painted pages.
Totally. And I'd like to think that, like, he put it in there because he felt like they needed it, whether they pay for it or not. You know what I mean? It's just like, I have to do this. And then, obviously,
And this is where you see, like, that cartoony ability that he has paying off, right? Like, let's electrocute this character and see what happens. And then giant payoff as we get to see Lobo being Lobo, what we came for. This ad does make me want to read The Demon.
McRae is cool, man.
That's a good looking.
He's great. I know John. He's a good guy. I have those collections, by the way. They're good. It's Garth Ennis writing too. So
yeah. Imagine Emond doing like Bane. Like he would have done just a killer version of Bane.
He would have made that back break more dynamic.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly more visceral. Lobocop. This was one of those random finds. Like once I started going into dollar bins and stuff, had no idea this existed. It does not feel like it's a real book.
Right.
Like how do you do this?
Yeah. That's the same thing that happened to me, Jim. That happened to me too. Like I randomly found that in a 50-cent bin like 4 or 5 years ago and was like, I didn't even know that Lobocop was a thing. Like what is this? It's
just nuts.
Very
that this
bizarre.
Exists. And I love that they have to do the disclaimer. This is a parody on page 1.
Yeah.
It's pretty accurate to Lobo. The mentality of Lobo at the time. I don't know what order these were done in, but it feels like he's really confident now getting into this area where you're getting to see all of his skills on display.
Yep.
Completely, again, over the top.
Would you guys say that there is a slight element of even Harvey Kurtzman cartooning in Martin's work and in some of the figures, some of the gestures?
I could see it. Some of the rubber, the
rubberiness. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good call. I would be curious about like what influences he was actually drawing from, you know, if it's Kurtzman, if it's a disciple of Kurtzman that he's pulling from, because you'll see a lot of cartoon language. Like he's looking at somebody that has that cartoon.
Will Elder came to mind with some of the white trash stuff with all the, there's chicken fat.
Yes. Man, I would love whenever this stuff shows up too. You know, just like throwaway vehicles or something, but he's so good at it. This is some of that chicken fat kind of stuff whenever he does draw like a background and it's just loaded. Like if we zoom in on that, it's readable.
Yep.
There we go.
Wow.
That's what we're here for.
Covering up his junk.
That's amazing. Haven't seen him do a lot of metal of this sort so far, and it's perfect. And that poor car design that I like, forget about it. But you know, like this kind of cartoony stuff, he's certainly looking at people that are versed in that cartoon language.
Yes. And you know, again, like just as a cartoonist looking at this, it's like I wouldn't want to have to draw Lobocop over and over in every panel. It's just a complicated, but he makes it his own. You know, he makes it work for him. And it looks like he's having a blast drawing this stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. The people who are protesting Lobo calls it an illegal gathering, gives them some time to clear out, and goes to work. Also, not that far off from like the flavor of RoboCop.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is Judge Dredd.
Yeah, totally.
Which is British, so it's that sphere of influence.
Yeah, I wonder. Do you guys know if he did any Judge Dredd? Because that seems like a perfect fit for his style.
I don't know that he was at 2000 AD.
Yeah, I couldn't find any of that in like the research I did, but it seemed like he just kind of bounced around. He did a couple things for heavy metal. I showed Ed an amazing Ninja Turtles little story he did for heavy metal at one point, and
very noteworthy on this channel, you know, him doing Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I feel like that's a book that we all hold up in high esteem. Ed shared those pics, so I got to see those as well. And it's amazing to see him do those characters.
So good. It's really cool.
And it feels like that's an Eastman, like, hey, man, come back.
A little largesse.
We had such a good time with White Trash. Like, you can do some more work for me.
Dude, this cover, by the way, like, seeing this on the newsstand when it came out where, you know, like Deadman is putting his hand through Lobo. Yeah. It's such a bizarre, really interesting, just really unique thing going on. You put this next to like your monthly Superman book and it's, there's no comparison.
This is my favorite of his Lobo work. At least of the stuff that I have. I think he did a couple more like short stories that were in like maybe a Lobo annual and stuff. I don't have those, but this stuff, I think his Lobo, like he's really found it at this point. This is 1995. So like I said, this is the most recent Lobo stuff or the latest Lobo stuff that I have of his. And I guess it's painted, although, you know, like some of this stuff feels like a conventional ink black line. So I don't know, maybe he's blending the two, doing some ink, some painting on this stuff. But it really shines.
It's interesting too because he's taking that Kelly Jones elongated grotesque madman and adding, you know, his own spin onto that.
Yeah, even going further than Kelly Jones, which wouldn't have seemed possible for anybody that's familiar with that Kelly Jones Deadman material. Part of what I love about this is it's taking place on this on Bismo Beach, so you're going to end up seeing a lot of like bodybuilder types, which kind of fit pretty well with both Lobo and Deadman.
He even goes chibi.
Yeah.
He could do it all.
Yeah, totally leaning into that cartoon style, the little dots for eyes. And of course, you can imagine not getting along with his fellow beachgoers.
Right.
Love this kind of stuff. Anytime he gets into the cartoon, it's great. Guy hits him with a frisbee and asks if he's okay, so he returns the frisbee and the question.
Gives him a receipt.
Same with this dude that was trying to sell him some beach clothes. Stuffs them in a suitcase. And here we go. So over the top.
Yeah. Dude has syringes
in his
stuck
nipples.
Wow. Yeah.
I think the guy's name might be Steroids.
His name.
Steroid Bikers is tattooed on his chest. So good.
Yeah, man. I mean, look at this stuff. It's just so... You're not going to see another comic on the shelves that looks like this. It's just...
You also get to see that development style-wise. You know, going from white trash to this, like, he's really pushing these forms much further than he does in the earlier stuff that we looked at.
This is unbelievable. This splash page is... Wow. Like, look at everything going on here. I mean, he's literally tearing this dude's arm off to the point of... Like, this is way more... graphic and I think grotesque than Biz ever got with it. It's like we're seeing full-blown anatomy happening inside here. You know, wow. You know,
it's incredible, and it's again mixing media. If you look at like Lobo's torso, that looks like the painted stuff that he's doing, but clearly this is like line art in other places.
Do you think he's getting real sharp with it with the paint, like, you know, inking with paint?
I honestly, I don't know how you make this.
Yeah.
I don't know if you do some of it in line art and then he's blue lining to get the paint on there. You got me. Any guesses on that, Jim?
I would have to consult with a technical master like my buddy Mike Huddleston or Jason Sean Alexander, someone who knows that painterly world a little bit more and just figure out like what is happening here. But I think you guys are close with like he's on the pages he's painting, he's like drawing this stuff and maybe projecting it onto illustration board, inking part of it, leaving some of the line open and just filling it with paint. And he's at this point, he's like a super, super tight painter, you know, in complete control of the medium and airbrush and everything that's involved.
Do you think he's painting all of the color? Because some of these colors are so flat, some of these backgrounds. I wonder how you achieve that.
Looks like airbrush. You could do that with an airbrush pretty easy.
That must be it. Yeah, it would explain some of the splatter effect, too, that he's able to achieve.
That kind of stuff. Yeah, and all this.
It's a really good Lobo. I don't know if you've ever seen the Sam Keith Lobo. I forget, Highway to Hell maybe is the name of it.
Oh, yeah.
And it has some of these qualities, some of the, where like you're almost doing painting and ink next to each other. Yep.
Look at that, man. Little shouts to Glenn Danzig with the Sam Hain. Or no, I guess that's more the Danzig skull.
Yeah, almost.
Oh,
totally.
yeah. That's incredible. That's so over the top. That's like something out of Metalocalypse or something, you know? That's the other thing about his work and his work on Lobo, just like Bisley. I mean, this is like metal type shit, you know. Put your devil horns in the air, bang your head, put on some Slayer, and also this appearance of Darkseid. It's like, why doesn't Darkseid just look like this in DC Comics normally?
Totally.
It's like the best Darkseid, you know, I've seen.
You really feel the granite skin.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like cracks in his stone flesh. I mean, just completely gonzo now on his anatomy at this point.
We're going to Dante right now, I think, man.
And again, still has this cartoony language, you know, able to show us him shaking his head.
Just looking at that last page, it's like these originals have to be bigger than 11 by 17. They have to be.
You would hope so.
There's no way he's doing this to the 11 by 17 scale.
Look at that great lettering.
Oh yeah,
painting that lettering in.
Super putrid.
A lot of money shots in this one.
Yep.
It's a good effect too. Again, like being able to call in the cartoony parts whenever you need to do, like, we need him to be electrocuted. How does that look? Slamming his head. Yeah, this is really a display of what he's capable of.
Yeah. And I was going to say, and then he goes to this look of like the open line, and I mean, I don't know if it's watercolor, but it's a much airier type look because these are the spirits now of Lobo and
Right.
Deadman.
Got to put a little skull over the junk.
Yeah.
I see what I think are some marks in some of this stuff as well.
Like maybe a old school Prismacolor kind of.
Yeah, sometimes you can see the strokes pretty distinctly. I don't see any on this spread, but on the previous spread, I could see stuff, and it's like, I think definitely it was probably a marker, but again, I just don't know. Hard to say.
Yeah.
But it does allow him to really show off what he's capable of, this story.
That's markerish.
And it makes me wonder what all he's doing like post 95, because I think he passes in like 2004, so almost a decade of work being done, after this issue of Lobo.
Yeah, I mean, I in my research, I saw he was freelancing, he was doing album covers, he was developing some animated stuff. He was living in LA at the time. There's a website called neotext.com, and Ben Mara and I both did illustration work for some of the novels they have up on this website, and they have have a really good Martin Emond career retrospective article up on there that I would recommend everyone check out if they want to know more about Martin's work. But it is weird and also adds to the kind of allure and mystery of him as an artist that we only have this, like I said, like this limited body of work for him. And it definitely leaves me wanting more. I mean, I think most of his published comic stuff, but there's got to be some archives of other stuff that he did, and anyone out there, leave a comment or something, but I hope maybe someone would have access to, we need like a Martin Emond art book or, coffee table book or something.
That's a great image to end on with Lobo. Very cool, Jim. Very fun to walk through some of this work too, because there's so much of this stuff that we look at in our collections, and it takes a while to get to everybody. But Martin Emond, a guy that I've enjoyed looking at his work for years, so very fun to actually put it under the microscope for everybody. Yeah,
definitely, and I just think that his work in terms of comic book artists and illustrators, like he deserves to have more of a spotlight on him and have more eyes on his work, because I will mention him often to people, and a lot of people still don't know who he is. People know White Trash, sort of, but it's one of those things of, I feel like he's kind of a missing piece, and he should get a little bit more love, So I'm glad we had a chance to check out more.
Jim, before we get out of here, man, what books do you have out in the wild? Where should people go find your work?
Yeah, man. JimMahfood.com to purchase books, minis, prints. Girl Scout Stone Ghost is still in comic shops, collecting my latest and greatest creator-owned series. Also, Zestworld.com if you guys want brand new, ongoing Girl Scouts online comics. And Jim Mahfood at Instagram and Twitter.
Jim Rugg, what do you have out in the wild, man?
Hulk Grand Design, the treasury-sized collection, is up for pre-order now at your local comic shops or online wherever you buy books, and that'll be out in shops in December, so in time to be the perfect Christmas gift. Just wrap a red ribbon around it, and you'll be in business. That is Hulk Grand Design, the Treasury Edition collection, and you can join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see more of my comics, download some out-of-print comics, and support me that way.
Red Room Trigger Warnings, trade paperback, going to be in stores September 2022. Great companion piece to go along with that Antisocial Network trade paperback from 2021. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game. These comics are banned in more than 28 countries, banned in more than 10 comic shops, so you may need to hit up the link tree to order and pre-order these comics, or you could just hit up the Patreon. $3 will get you the archive there. More than 250 pages of comics up there as we speak. New strips every Tuesday. What else do we have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Given those marching orders, will be on our way.
Read more comics.